Welcome to another edition of the Dogger Pass Podcast. This for UFC Vegas 65. This episode of the Dogger Pass Podcast and all episodes of the Dogger Pass Podcast are brought to you by Prize Picks. Use promo code DOP when making a new account to get a match up to $100 on your first deposit. We got producer Megan on the sticks. Cody Saftic is on the line. I've been getting torched recently, Cody. I mean, we're coming to you a little bit early this week. Think of this episode more of as a, UFC first look. Because really didn't have time to do too much tape on these, but we'll give our initial thoughts, what we're thinking about these lines and everything like that as we go through the 13 fight card here. I've been getting a little bit torched recently. I've been betting too many underdogs and all the chalks coming through. So it's been it's been a rough for the last 2 weeks particularly, but the last month or so. Not so great for yours truly, but it's a marathon, not a race. Got to keep yourself in the game, keep surviving, and eventually, fortunes will change. But how are you doing this week, buddy?
Yeah, good, man. I was very content with how last week's card played out. Again, a lot of the underdogs that I myself chased were at the bottom of the parlay, so them losing, it is what it is, not the end of the world. But more primarily, Dan Hooker came through, Carlos Ulberg came through. They were kind of the big value plays. On the women's side of things, obviously, crushed fairly easily there. Molly McCann. Well,
that was the worst bet I've ever made.
I know a couple of people that are on the same page. She's got the Barstool backing. She's got the Patty Pimblett backing. It's we know she can defensively wrestle. No. So what's she going to do against an Aaron Blanchfield type of opponent? So things went pretty good for the most part. Now, you and I talked about it on the preview show. I did fully intend on going with Alex Pereira, building the parlays a little bit tougher. What was that all about? Well, a little bit tougher, right? Because again, looking at it, it's who am I putting right at the top? Who's my second most confident player? Who's my third most confident player in the card? And so again, it came down to a Hooker minus 165 or a Carlos Ulberg minus 135. Neither of them scream, I want to be on your top ticket. And so there's a bit of hesitancy there. So anyways, I thought to myself, I'll just put Izzy Adesanya at the top. No big deal, right? And if enough of these tickets are intact that it's worth hedging out, 100% I'm going to take the hedge out. It's a violent main event. Could go either way. Obviously, there's some history and there was a knockout. Why would you want to roll Izzy? But again, I mean, it's all about crafting the parlays. The issue is if you're not there to actively tell people going into the main event, hedge, then they just don't. And then when they lose, it's somehow your fault that they didn't hedge out. So I don't care. If you watch the program, you know pretty much how the strategy goes. You understand that the hedge out at the end. This is the kind of card I'll do the exact same thing. I like Sergey Spivak, right? I'm going to put Sergey Spivak on the top of my card. If I've got 3 or 4 tickets intact, and this past weekend, that's what we had. We had a minus 838 still, a plus 838 still intact, a plus 340 still intact. Your top ticket still intact. Take your hedge out. There's a bunch of money to be made there, and it's an easy hedge out because the underdog's big plus money and has a strategy of winning that involves around KOing your guy stiff. Same thing this week. I like Spivak. How is Spivak going to lose this main event, Paul? We're about to talk about it, but I'll tell you what. There's an inclination here that he's probably going to get KO'd stiff if he's going to lose. So I'll play him all day, but you can't be too proud to pull the hedge out at the end. I get letting it roll if you've got a ticket left in play, 2 tickets left in play. But again, if you were ever in that same strategy and the PRP is still going and you somehow hit the first 13 fights, you're rolling into the 14th fight of the night, everything's intact, you wouldn't hedge? Come on, man. We're setting it up for the hedge. So last week was actually difficult, man. It looked like a lot of underdogs were going to come through and maybe not so much the case. And I even let myself get cold feet. You and I talked on the show. I picked Ryan Spann, did the show with Manpreet on the Thursday, talked to a couple people. Geez, Reyes is just too big and too strong, and Spann's got no cast stand.
I feel bad about that one.
Well, a couple of people. It's not just you. No, not just you. And it's my own fault. I'm a full-grown man, right? You take tidbits of information, you analyze it, you think what makes the most sense. But you could just tell that Reyes is not... I don't know. It's last week's card. It is what it is. But Spann did spring off a nice underdog upset. And, of course, Alex Pereira in the main event springing off a nice underdog upset. There was no cause for concern last week. I thought the favorites that we keyed in on came through. And outside of people that maybe didn't pull the trigger on the hedge, again, I don't know what to tell you, right? Actually, I do know what to tell you. I don't do the tweets on – I don't really care about the Twitter side of things. You put out the picks, okay? And what I would hope is people are like, oh, yeah, I listened to the show this week, and this is his picks. Someone accordingly maybe switch a couple picks. But a lot of people, they don't even don't listen to the show, and to those people, I don't care, man. If you don't listen to the show, it's easy to be like, bro, you had Izzy at the top. He was your most confident player. Bomb. I knew he was going to get knocked out.
Yeah.
First of all, you didn't know he was going to get knocked out. Second of all, pretty good fight. And third of all, you obviously just didn't watch the show, man. I just don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, Pereira was 9-1 live on the money line. And then he was like 18-1 by decision. I mean, if you took the decision prop after round 4, you had no real chance except for a draw coming through there. And then him by knockout was like 11-1. Like that was Izzy was winning that fight. It is what it is. That's MMA, and it's
3-1.
been
He gets caught.
Three title fights this year. Obviously, you got the Yuri Prochazka versus Glover Teixeira. That was the most absurd one, with Prochazka getting a round 5 submission. And then you had obviously Leon Edwards. I was on the right side of that. I was on the wrong side of Teixeira. And I got lucky. I ended up adding some under 4.5, which won by 30 seconds. But by no means was that a sharp bet. So that helped salvage some of my night, I suppose. But yeah, it was pretty rough. It was not my finest work by any stretch of the imagination. Hopefully UFC Vegas 65 is. And we got Sergey Spivak taking on Derrick Lewis in the main event. Spivak's a -200 favorite. Derrick Lewis can be had for +170. One of these books out there just opened up like props, and I was like, well, if Lewis is +170 by knockout in a 5-round fight, I'm interested to see like what is his by knockout prop. His by knockout prop is +180. His inside the distance prop is +175. So it's like they know that all of his win probability is wrapped up in him landing one of those big hands on Sergey Spivak's chin. I think it's possible that happens. Is it more likely that Spivak's able to take him down at will, ride him out, beat him up, and probably force him to quit? Yeah, I mean, Lewis obviously, it seems like he's maybe at the end of the tail, at the end of the trail at this point. I mean, it's a heavyweight fight. It's a high volatility type of situation. Anytime Derrick Lewis gets in there, the cleaner path to victory seems to be on Sergey Spivak's side. Derrick Lewis obviously just needs to land one clean one, like Walt Harris was able to do to Sergey Spivak, Tom Aspinall was able to do to Sergey Spivak. It's definitely possible that Derrick Lewis gets this knockout. I'm going to lean towards where I think you are going with this one. I'm going to pick Sergey Spivak. I think, even though there's a bit of a size disparity here, I still think that like he should be able to take him down at will and absolutely mollywop him if he gets this fight to the mat. I see that playing out pretty consistently, maybe 70% of the time. So yeah, I'll pick Spivak. I'm terrified about the nuke coming back from Derrick Lewis though. So I mean, obviously super early in the week, we'll see where these numbers go, but I'm not too excited about betting this main event. What about you?
Listen, it's a classic Derrick Lewis fight. He's the plus money underdog. All analytics suggest that he's going to get taken down or likely get roughed up and beaten up. But yeah, he's the Black Beast. He's got that tremendous power in his hands, and it only takes one to turn the tide. You and I talk about this pretty much every time a Derrick Lewis fight comes up. When he wins, they're usually in fights he's losing, right? And he's able to pull off that big comeback. The Alexander Volkov fight, the Victor Pesta fight once upon a time, his fight with Shamil Abdurakhimov, like him taking his fight with Travis Brown, takes that initial beating and is able to come back. But yeah, 37-year-old Derrick Lewis, it does feel like the injuries are starting to mount up. He was always one to have a bad back. He's got a bad hip. He's not able to train to the level he wants. Sometimes he just shows up. I'm not going to say for the paycheck because he's always down to throw those hands. But sometimes he shows up motivated. He's going to get the win and advance his career. And sometimes he shows up, he's a little bit compromised. At 37, I think you're getting a lot more, that more compromised version. And he just doesn't look all that same. In his last number of fights, again, he's lost his last 2. And just not like the Tai Tuivasa fight. He gave him a good first round. He threw down. He landed some good shots that hurt Tai Tuivasa. But as soon as he got extended out to that first round, his cardio just falls apart. Now, we always talk about bad takedown defense. And he shows career takedown defense in the UFC 54%. Most guys that have wanted to take him down have taken him down. But funnily enough, he actually hasn't been taken down in the UFC in over 2 years. It's not even like that's the only strategy to beat him now is get this guy to the ground. Guys are standing up with him and having a lot more success. So I do see a lot of improvements out of Sergey Spivak in his stand-up game, but it would be such a bad decision to stand in the center of the cage and throw down with Derrick Lewis. So I have to assume his setup is use the jab, use the front kick, and eventually get under this guy. Lewis particularly struggles with single leg takedowns and like low ankle trips, set his base off. And shots of the body are his kryptonite for sure. But it seems like Spivak's setup game and his takedown game are going to be good enough that he should be able to take down Lewis. Now, Lewis has always relied on the exact same thing. He just decides, YOLO, time to stand up, and will just push his opponent off and get up. And again, it's worked against a lot of guys, and it's worked against a decent amount of BJJ black belts as well. But 37-year-old, older, tired, hurt, compromised Derrick Lewis, it's not that easy. You can't just decide to get up whenever you want, and then the amount of energy that you exert, and then you get taken back down. He's live for the KO. If you're going to bet him, you're going to bet him by the KO, and you're probably going to hit that under 2.5, under 3.5 for Derrick Lewis. But I see one guy on the back nine trending downwards. They're giving him some tough matchups. He's not looking quite as interested. And for Spivak, not nearly fighting the same level of competition, but there's no doubt about it, Paul, that this guy's filling into his frame. He's already big for heavyweight, but was one of these guys that didn't walk around all that heavy. He's starting to fill out. He's starting to mature. He's starting to add different wrinkles to his game. You can point out certain spots where it's like, I don't think he looked good in the Alexei Olenek fight. He looked god awful. He was getting outstruck at times. He didn't get to take down in the first. He looked awful. The next fight against Tom Aspinall, he gets destroyed in the first round. Like, is he vulnerable? Yes. And he's always been susceptible to those big, heavy power punchers. But you can see that this guy's takedown game is solid. He's able to get down big opponents. And once he's on the ground, very positionally sound, good top pressure, the kind of guy that just will smother you and tire you away. He's still getting better. He's still filling out that frame. His cardio is getting better. He's getting the experience. And the UFC is obviously looking to transition this guy to maybe a top 5, top 10 type of heavyweight. And beating Derrick Lewis would do a lot for his resume. So, again, going back to his last fight against Augusto Sakai, 6 takedowns, mauls him on the ground, takes him out into the second. That's his second straight performance where he gets easy takedowns, great on top. How does Derrick Lewis lose? He gives up easy takedowns. He's not very good off his back. So maybe it's not that simple. He'll just get the easy takedowns and grind him out. But I think that being the more likely outcome. But again, if my parlays are intact and I stand to make a big money off it, as much as I'm not betting Derrick Lewis, I do not like Derrick Lewis at all. You'd be a fool to recognize that he does not at least have a chance in this, because Spivak's losing condition, right? How he loses is generally get torched by these big, heavy power punches. We've seen it happen a number of times. Lewis fits that bill, and Lewis is dangerous for the first 5 minutes, which could be problematic. So last but not least, I'll leave you with this. I am going to take Spivak. Spivak pre-fight flop. Could end up on one of the top 2 tickets. I do have faith in him, but I'm not stupid enough not to hedge out. But could be a decent live betting opportunity if Spivak does not get torched in the first round. Because if Lewis is going to win, again, one has to imagine it's going to be early. But if he can kind of take some of those shots, neutralize Derrick for the early little bit, but even just drops the first round, Lewis will start to tire. And I think that's when Sergey's going to trip him up, get on top, and do some damage. So regardless, I'm going to have to take the polar bear Sergey Spivak to get the job done.
I think it's better as a live, just to jump onto that. I think it's a better live betting perspective if Spivak doesn't get rid of him in like round 1, and then it pops up as like a plus 600 because he's down a round. It's like Derrick Lewis is literally made for those. Like he has third round knockouts. He has lots of like second round knockouts where he lost round 1. He looked horrible. He looked like he had to take a dump in the middle of the cage. Everyone remembers those situations. Like the body language. I mean, Alexander Volkov is a classic situation. It's like he was literally 11 seconds away from winning that fight. And then Derrick Lewis lands one big shot after getting absolutely mollywopped from pillar to post. And Derrick Lewis comes through. And like, I don't know what the live odds were on that one, but like, he's got the power in his hands to change the whole complexion of the fight with one strike. So I was thinking from a live betting perspective, it's like if we get through 2 rounds and Spivak is slowing down a little bit, it's like even when Derrick Lewis looks tired, he still has power in those hands. You could get like an obscene number. Like we're talking, I don't know. You would need I would need a pretty crazy number, obviously, with him being down 2 rounds. You don't expect him to win by decision. You expect him only to win by knockout. That was kind of my live betting angle and why I won't be jumping in at plus 170, because I kind of think the line's probably pretty accurate, to be perfectly honest. All right, let's move on to the co-main event. We got Kennedy and Nzechukwu taking on Ion Cutelaba. Minus 170 for Mr. Kennedy. Plus 145 Cutelaba. Who you got here, buddy?
Yeah, I'm leaning towards Kenny and Nzechukwu again. To me, it's just another, like, again, like you said, it's an early look. So we're taking out the early stuff. What do we like? What do we know? And in Kenny Nzechukwu's case, he, to me, very much is another fighter that's green and developing. I mean, he's got a wicked long frame for the division, comes in at 6'5", 83-inch reach, fights as a southpaw. I've always thought he's had the goods. I've always thought he's got skill and talent, but just never able to really tie it all in together. I know he's been training. I know his coaches are very vested in him, and sometimes I have higher expectations than Kennedy than he actually goes out and perform. But I got to keep telling myself that the guy's only 29 years old, and he had a late start into MMA. So at some point, if he stays the course, stays dedicated, they will figure out the best way to utilize that frame of his, and he will become a problem for guys. Looking at his last number, doesn't look particularly good, right? He's 1-2 over his last 3. He's had a couple of dull performances in the mix. I want to focus in. He gets knocked out by Dong Jung, terrible performance, knocked out. Then he almost takes a full year off. When he came back against Nikolai Negumereanu, I thought he looked good. I thought he got robbed in the fight. Striking was on point. I mean, just high volume, able to control him for the most part. Started to fatigue, started to get backed up. Do I agree with the decision? No. But there was promise there. There was work in progress. There was somebody that was building it and getting better. But is he ever going to realize his potential? Maybe not. And then his last fight against Cole Roberson, again, I mean, he actually switched up the game plan. He wrestled heavy, got 5 takedowns in that fight. Grappling looked a lot better. I feel like that's mixed martial arts that's showing you the other elements of his game. He's not just this long-rangey striker. He can grapple a little bit. Solid on top. I mean, very difficult guy to move off you. Cardio checked out. Cardio is actually another thing that's held up in some of his other fights. People will remember the Carlos Ulberg fight, the Denis Stoichnich fight, or sorry, the Darko Stosic fight. Yeah, it's like he's getting taken down left, right, and center, but working his way back up. The Ulberg fight, he just shells up in the early going and lets Ulberg tire himself out and then comes back on. So his ability to fight for 3 rounds potentially, his ability to improve his grappling, his ability to hopefully hone in on using that reach advantage. Again, I keep telling myself that this is a talented fighter that eventually will pull it all together. Last fight looked career best. Fight before that, I wouldn't say career best, but again, trending in the right direction.
And should have won.
I feel like these guys, I thought he should have won. I honestly did. But I'm hoping that these guys out of Fortis, these guys out of Texas are really going to be able to hone in and get him there. Ion Cutelaba, meanwhile, similar to Derrick Lewis, hard guy to bet against because he's a shit-eating wild man. At any point, he can turn the lights off. At any point, he can show up. But similar to a Lewis, he's a 50-50 guy. He does show up half the time, and he's a serious problem. The other half the time, he's not so good. Has power, has that European Sambo championship under his belt, has big throws, but fights so aggressively that his cardio has always been an issue. Not only that, I mean, paints himself green and shows up freaking out at weigh-ins sometimes, but not the biggest light heavyweight. In fact, a guy that would probably be best suited at 185 pounds. And so my issue for Cutelaba in this fight is he's not just taking on a fellow 205er, he's taking on like one of the bigger guys in the division. He tends to wing a lot of his shots, and for Kennedy, as long as he doesn't tall man defense and shell up straight up against the cage, if he moves, he should be able to just intercept him coming in routinely. But it's the takedowns that I'm more so impressed with Kennedy. If he takes down Ion Cutelaba, Cutelaba, one, will tire because he just uses way too much muscle trying to explode back up routinely, is there to give up the takedowns. And in his last fight against Johnny Walker, even in his fight before that with Ryan Spann, like, he's showing you that he's not a good grappler at all. So is Kennedy on the level of one of those guys? No, not. He's not. But could he? Could he be good enough to go get them some takedowns, tire this guy out, take him to some deeper waters, touch him up from the outside, win this fight? Yeah, I think Kennedy can win this fight. Don't love the line at minus 170 because Kennedy has been going through some recent struggles. But again, I do see more promise in him than I see to Cutelaba at this point. So tentatively speaking, yeah, I go with Kennedy and Nzechukwu here, minus 170.
Yeah, I generally agree with most of your takes there. The big one for me is Kennedy and Nzechukwu against Danilo Marques. I was on Marques by submission, and Marques had his back for 2 full rounds. Never really gave up on himself, constantly fought it, and then had cardio in round 3 to put away a completely gassed Marques in that fight. The problem with Ion Cutelaba has always been, and probably always will be, because he's been around for a while now, and we're not really seeing improvements from him. It's that he's got really good wrestling, good explosive wrestling. He can't hold anybody down, though. It's like Dustin Jacoby was able to take him down 9 times. Well, Dustin Jacoby got up 9 times. And it's usually like he takes you down really, really quick, but like they're getting up immediately. Can't hold position. That's something he really needs. Like if he's so excellent at getting people to the ground, but it's like if you just take him down, like it's pretty much a meaningless. It's basically like just
waste of energy.
It's like landing a hook basically at that rate. Like if you're not actually getting any sort of time on top, it's like the judges don't really look at those takedowns as being anything. That's always kind of been his problem here. So I'm not going to be surprised by Ion Cutelaba getting some early takedowns, particularly in round 1, but he's proven time and time again. It's like, if he's not getting subbed, obviously, by somebody with a really good BJJ game, which I don't think Kennedy has, we get into late in round 2, and into round 3, the guy just has nothing left in the tank, and then he just becomes a complete punching bag. So I'm with you. I think Kennedy rolls here. We'll see where like props go and how the whole week plays out on that front, but really, really hard to put any money on Ion Cutelaba at this point. I'm not going to lie. All right, we got Waldo Cortes-Acosta taking on Chase, the Vanilla Gorilla Sherman. Low-level heavyweights, baby. Minus 170 for Cortes-Acosta, plus 145 for Chase. Who you got?
Yeah, well, again, I think I'm going to take a shot on the underdog here. These underdogs are going to have to come through. These greasy ones going to have to come through us for eventually. And I think Chase Sherman's got at least a viable chance to potentially go there and win this. Waldo Cortes, we talked about him just recently, made his debut against Jared Vandera. So a couple things that are concerning. First of all, the guy was coming in with a pro boxing background. He's a pro boxer. Not a great one, mind you, 6-4, but had fought at a decent level. The fights that you'd seen in Bellator, again, likes to use his stand-up. The fights you'd seen in LFA, likes to use his stand-up. Prone to getting grinded up against the cage, but good finesse boxing. So I thought he would chop up Vandera from the outside, no problem. And for the most part, I guess he did. But Vandera had a ton of success just kicking his legs, man. And not even like he kicked them that many times or if he really sat down on any of them. But he big-time compromised the general movement of Waldo Acosta Cortes. And again, as someone who had a lot of money on Waldo and had him pretty high up on the list of tickets, I didn't think he looked all that good against perhaps the most beatable guy in the division in Jared Vandera. Once it's all said and done, he took on the most flat-footed and plodding guy and really didn't outstruck him by that big of a differential, 73-56. Mm-hmm. His leg got hurt, it got compromised, and then that fight is literally October 29th, so 2.5 weeks. It's about 2.5 weeks ago since he fought. So you would take a week off afterwards. Your leg would be hurt. You take a few days at the very least. I don't think you just run and just be like, I want to get back in the gym as fast as you possibly can. But in this case, Chase Sherman had a canceled fight. So they're looking to rebook Chase Sherman ASAP. They offered to Waldo Cortes. Are you going to get a better version of him than you did against Vandera? No, probably not, because it was 2.5 weeks ago and his leg got chewed up. So if you're now fighting Chase Sherman, well, one thing about Sherman is he's got nasty leg kicks, man. He does, and he will sit down on them. Him and his coaching staff would be very aware of the fact that this professional boxer is a little flat-footed, sits down a little too much, and you can hit him. Now, what's Chase's biggest weakness? Well, he doesn't got a great chin. Waldo Acosta Cortes, not one of these big power-punching heavyweights. He's more one of these decision guys, touch and go, take you into deeper waters. I know he's got the cardio to beat Chase Sherman. I know he's got the durability to beat Chase Sherman, but I'm wondering about the numbers. If Sherman can make this a decision type of heavyweight fight, stay to the outside, use those leg kicks, slow him down. You look at Sherman's numbers and they're extremely impressive, right? Lands 127 against Jared Vandera, landed 117 against Parker Porter, 88 against Arlovsky, 79 against Sakai, 111 against Grabowski, 103 against Coulter. He's been routinely one of these 100-plus significant strikes type heavyweights, whereas Waldo Acosta Cortes showed us in his last fight against Vandera. That's the easiest guy to put up 100-plus on. That he was falling behind the numbers. He was picking and choosing his punches a little bit, and maybe he doesn't check leg kicks all that well. So I think they're all passive victory for Chase Sherman to potentially capitalize on. And at plus 145, you know what? I'll take the underdog shot.
Yeah, I'm with you, to be perfectly honest. Yeah, the most of the same sentiments. The only thing I will like bite back on is I think Chase Sherman, his biggest weakness is actually guys who can like grapple. It's like if you get him to the ground, you're finding a submission. If you have any sort of jiu-jitsu. But like I don't see that from Waldo whatsoever. He's obviously a former boxer and not even a particularly good one. 2 weeks turnaround, like I'm sure any fight in the heavyweight division, you have some lumps, you have some bruises. Like he hasn't put in any sort of training really, I would imagine, since that fight. Yeah, plus 145, greasy heavyweight, low-level heavyweight fight. I think you could do far worse than Chase Sherman. Oh my God, I can't believe those words came out of my mouth, Cody. But that's what we're dealing with at UFC Vegas 65. All right, moving on down, we got Andre Fialho taking on Muslim Salikhov. Straight pick 'em, homie. Who you got?
Ever so slightly leaning towards Salikhov, but this one's going to be greasy. So my knocks on Salikhov, again, you're going to say I'm going to call him old, and I will.
Yeah,
not exactly
classic.
like a spring chicken within the division, but beyond that, it's low volume. It really is. He's got nasty power. He scores knockdowns in a vast majority of his fights. It's that he doesn't always follow up on these shots. He tends to just throw the one at a time. You know, he's got some flashy kicks in his arsenal. He'll go to the body, but he generally just likes to sit down on that one shot. His opponent can outwork him, no doubt, but you got to be one of these guys that's durable, that's going to take his best shot and roll through with them. When you look at his 4-fight winning streak, drops Ricky Rainey, knocks him out. Drops Nordine Taleb, knocks him out. The Laureano Staropoli fight, he took him down 3 times. It was a different wrinkle to his game. He's showing he's got some wrestling, but that's not him at his best. Him at his best is sitting down on these punches. Same thing with Francisco Trinaldo, never been knocked out. But in his fight with him, he drops him. It causes Trinaldo to be very tentative and stare at him the whole time, not throw any offense, and he can get through on those type of fights. But Muslim Salikhov versus Jingliang Li. Jingliang Li is the leech for a reason. He likes to come forward. He likes to try to attack his opponents. He's never been in a bad fight. And you can see that Salikhov being forced to work, not exactly his preferred method. Wasn't able to get a knockdown, wasn't able to accrue any real damage, and Jingliang Li eventually turns the tide on him and puts him away. Is he going to make any vast improvements to his game? No. I think he is who he is at this point, and if you give him a low-volume striker who potentially has durability issues that may stand in front of him, that's when he'll be able to thrive. But outside of that, I think he's extremely limited. Andre Fialho, meanwhile, that's kind of where he's at. His durability never been all that good. Look him on the regional scene. He's got some nasty knockouts, mostly by knockout, or some nasty losses, mostly by knockout. Comes to the UFC, the Michel Pereira fight. He showed better durability in that fight, but he really did get teed off on. And then subsequently to that, he's kill or be killed. Him versus Miguel Beza, they throw down. He drops him, he knocks him out. Him versus Cameron Van Camp, they throw down. Van Camp rocks him. In the first minute and a half, he's on rubbery legs, and then he returns the favor and knocks Van Camp out. His last fight with Jake Matthews rocks him and takes him out. So listen, all of his fights are knockdown, drag him type fights. Again, he's got great firepower. His durability is not great. Salikhov's got low volume firepower, but hell of heavy hands. Big finishing ability is just low volume. So in my mind, Fialho's going to cause the fight. He's going to make it a fight. He's going to come forward and cause Salikhov to react and throw down. And once it goes, my guns go boom, boom, your guns go pow, pow, boom, boom's going to win. And Salikhov's going to clip him with something and put him over. So I like Fialho, I do, but durability has been his issue. And I understand Muslim Salikhov's coming off a knockout loss, but traditionally speaking, the dude's pretty tough. You know, he's a multiple-time Sanshao, Kung Fu, hand-to-hand combat champion. He's been in well over a couple hundred fights in his career. He understands what's going to go down here. And I think it'll be one of those sites where Fialho might be landing combinations. He might be outworking him. He might be winning the fight. And then Salikhov's just going to land that one money shot and put him away. So I guess Salikhov, more importantly, Salikhov by knockout. If you want to try to, is he going to win? Probably by knockout. So you could juice up that even money price a little bit. But I'll take Muslim Salikhov. Again, not my type of fighter because of the low volume, but I think he's got the right win condition here.
Yeah, for the purpose of the show, I'll tail you on the Salikhov train here. I think I'm more interested, and I keep refreshing on best fight odds to see if a prop for the under between these two guys, both of them coming off of knockout losses against opponents that were a step up from what they're facing on Saturday. Don't get me wrong on that front, but yeah, it should be fireworks. It's a very, very fun fight. It's not one that I'm very, very confident in by any stretch of the imagination. Definitely interested to see what we can do. It'll probably be lined as a 1.5 because the books be sharp like that these days, but definitely, keep refreshing, see if I can find myself a half-decent underplay between these two guys, because I think the bodies are going to hit the floor as well. All right, moving on, we got Rodolfo Vieira taking on Cody Brundage. Minus 180, Rodolfo, plus 155, Brundage. Who you got, buddy?
This might be another underdog shot for no other reason than Rodolfo Vieira minus 180. Like, I'm not feeling it. I'm really not. I think he's shown to us at this point that he's very one-dimensional. He's got excellent Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Even when the fight does hit the ground, it's not foregone conclusion done. He's just got good jiu-jitsu. It's not as if it's hot lava and you can't survive. So the one thing he does exceptionally well and does better than anybody, again, maybe open to interpretation, but his wrestling is just quite not honestly there. He had tons of good entries on Chris Curtis, not able to really drag him to the ground, make anything happen effectively. His striking is getting better. Physically, the guy's an animal. He's always in monster shape, and maybe he's been working on that cardio to allow him to fight into those later rounds. But what I see for the most part is a one-dimensional jiu-jitsu guy, struggles to get the fight to the ground, gets boxed up, gasses out, just not the kind of style I like. Again, going through his record, when he fights lower level guys, the Oscar Pachotas of the world, he submits them in the second. Saparbek Safarov, he submits them. They're good performance against lower level guys. Get the guy down, grind him out. Anthony Hernandez, he got him down. He got the positions he wanted. He still flat gassed out and then got submitted. His fight with Dustin Stolfus did not look good. Got outstruck for the better part of 2 rounds and then got him down and submitted him in the 3rd round. That's Dustin Stolfus. You're operating at a very low level. I like Hernandez. I do. Stolfus, not so much, right? And then that fight with Chris Curtis. I love Action Man. Hopefully you love Action Man. You can get Action Man on a good price. You're going to ride him all day. And again, it was much of the same. Like, he just shot desperate takedowns from too far out. I'll give him one thing. Curtis was so
striking looked better against Curtis.
Yes, I was just about to
before.
say. I'll give him that. Is that Curtis's hands were at his side the whole time because he was waiting for the shot. So it looked like Rodolfo Vieira was taking advantage. And he landed some killer right hands across the chin that a chinny guy probably topples over with. No doubt the striking is getting better. No doubt the cardio is getting better. No doubt he's starting to hone in on that athleticism, but he just doesn't seem complete package enough for me. Now, he can beat Cody Brundage because I just don't think Cody Brundage is necessarily that top 20 guy that's going to give him all the problems in the world. But this, where he does have skills are areas that I think he could definitely use. First of all, he's a collegiate wrestler. So in terms of his takedown defense, certainly not bad. We have seen him give up takedowns in the past, but
Maximov took him down 4 times.
Maximov got him down 4 times and had tons of top control on him, which is concerning. But again, Nick Maximov is a fellow collegiate wrestler and a BJJ black belt. So at least it was good that he was able to survive those positions. A lot of people thought he had won that fight. And I think he took that fight on pretty short notice, right? So maybe you try to give him a bit of a pass in that. And his last 2 against Dolce, he's getting killed. He's absolutely getting killed. And at no point does he quit on himself. Eyes on the target the whole time, trying to survive, trying to move long enough to lock up the guillotine choke and get the submission. None of this means all that much. To me, it's the last one. It's the Trejan Gore fight. He's got power in his hands, and he's got that wrestling. And to me, that's going to be important here against a guy like Rodolfo Vieira. If Brundage is the favorite, I'm probably talking about how good the BJJ of Rodolfo Vieira is. But that's not the case. In this case, I want to zone in on the wrestling and the power stand-up, right? Brundage does have the wrestling that I think maybe if he gives up a couple early takedowns, you got to make him work. You got to get back up. But the longer the fight goes, if Vieira starts to tire and Brundage doesn't, I think he can chop him up standing. Like Chris Curtis gave him a lot of respect, hit him with a lot of touch and go type shots. If you sit down on them, you could hurt him. I'm not huge on Brundage's cardio, and he's going to need cardio to win this fight. But again, I think that's he's a younger fighter, winning fights in the UFC, making improvements, looked good against Trejan Gore his last time out. And I feel like those type of guys will be able to surprise a guy like Rodolfo Vieira. So this is going to be very low on my list this week. But yeah, again, this is going to be underdog shot number 2 here. Slight lean at this point to Cody Brundage.
Ooh, I can't jump on board with you there, buddy.
I don't blame you. Don't blame me.
I can't do it. Am I going to touch a Rodolfo Vieira minus 180 price tag on the money line? I don't think so. I thought it was more impressive that, you know, he's able to keep a relative pace despite going 0 for 20 against Chris Curtis in takedowns. Maybe that cardio is a little bit better than it was before. That being said, this guy cuts an obscene amount of weight, so it's like, I'm not touching this fight until I see Rodolfo getting on the scales, because we had seen it before with him that it's like, if he has a really bad cut, if he's really, really sucked in, that was when the Fluffy fight happened. It's just like, you know, once he wasn't able to secure that submission, and it turns out Fluffy's super talented.
He's legit.
Yeah, like he's a guy that we kind of used to make fun of, and now it's like we got egg on our face because this guy looks, for middleweight division, looks like a decent, like top 10 kind of guy. Yeah, but like I think the improvements I saw from Vieira in his cardio, the improvements that I saw in his striking ability, I think he's the rightful favorite here. I'm going to side with him, but I got to see him step on the scales before I put any hard-earned dollars. I'm watching my spots a little bit more this week then, the last couple weeks I've just been throwing money away on a bunch of underdogs that are not coming through. So we're just, you got to constantly be adapting your game, and that's the process I'm in right now. But I saw that the prop that just opened on him by submission is like plus 125. That's probably the look, but we'll see when more places open up what that price would be. Moving on down, we got Jack Della Maddalena taking on Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts. Minus 430 for Jack Della, plus 330 for Danny Hot Chocolate. Who you got, buddy?
Yeah, well, I think this is everybody's pick of the week, right? Jack Della, even at this money line, I think he walks right through Roberts. Jack Della is a legitimate prospect. I mean, everything he's shown us has just been very, very impressive. He's still young, getting a lot better, and he's just got great volume. He comes on the Contender Series against Angeluso, who's not a terrible prospect in his own right, but he showed right there that he's got one of those $1 million motors on him. He'll just keep fighting. He'll keep throwing. He looks as good in the third round as he does in the first round. Goes out, lands 108 significant strikes on the Contender Series, and right away, Dana White's like, yes, please, my kind of guy. Signs with the UFC. His fight with Pete Rodriguez. Dude, it's the same thing. I mean, Pete Rodriguez is obviously not on his level, but is on some type of level, and Jack just walks right through him. Pete was a first-round guy. All of his wins had come from first round. I mean, he just beat Mike Jackson, same thing. It's a first round. He's at his best in the first round. No. So Jack Della, quick hand speed, great combinations, very accurate with his punches as well, and he's able to get Pete Rodriguez out of there. And then his last fight against Ramazan Emeev. So one thing about Ramazan Emeev, he's basically the human blanket. The guy gets a hold of you. He presses you up into the cage. There's no space to work with. He's a very difficult opponent to deal with. And with Jack Della, it's much of the same, man. I mean, he's able to keep his back up against the cage. He gets one takedown. He gets immediately back up. He pressures Emeev. He knocks Emeev out in the first round. The guy's got volume. He's got tenacity. He's got power. He's young. He's good looking. He's got a very fan-friendly style. They're going to move this guy along in the right direction. And Danny Roberts is exactly that right direction. I mean, he's entertaining enough that he'll stand there, he'll throw down with you. He's got some athleticism, he's got some flash, he's got a few tricks up his sleeve, but for the most part, durability has quite literally always been his issue. Now, you look back right through it, Dominic Steele drops him, Mike Perry knocks him out, Nordine Taleb knocks him out, Michael Pereira, that flying knee, gorgeous flying knee, knocks him out. And then even his last fight with Francisco Trinaldo, okay? Every time Trinaldo hits him, he does the stanky leg, man. It's terrible posturing. It's terrible body language. He cannot take a shot and roll through it. And the thing with Jack Della is this is not we're going to stand at range and have a sparring session. He is going to come at you, and he is going to break you down. And Roberts just does not deal with that level of opponent, especially that kind of pace and volume. So I got to think that Jack Della goes out there, not only gets a win, but like a empathetic under 1.5, Jack Della by TKO. I think he gets the job done and looks good doing it.
I mean, yeah, nothing shocking about that. Early props that I see out there, plus 145, Maddalena round 1. Maddalena KO, minus 175. I mean, these are just ways to get yourself off of the minus 450 on the money line. The round 1 would be a little bit more concerning. I'd be more inclined with Danny Hot Chocolate. I know that he did go to decision against Trinaldo. The chin held up a little bit for him, but Jack Della's... I love me some Grandpa T, don't get me wrong. But he's, we're talking of different speeds that these guys are entering and throwing shots at. Jack Della, he looks like the goods so far. Constantly making improvements. The 2 losses on his record are back in 2016. Onwards and upwards for him. This should just be an easy... I mean, he should probably walk right through Danny Hot Chocolate, if I'm being completely honest. So, I'm with you. No shocker. Minus 430 is wide, but probably justified. We got Charles Johnson taking on Zhalgas Zhumagulov. Minus 155 Johnson, plus 135 for Zhalgas. Your thoughts?
Again, this is a bit of a spam underdog play, but I think I got a slight lean towards Zhalgas Zhumagulov at that underdog price. Charles Johnson, LFA guy, career regional scene guy, and his biggest talent seems to be he gets taken down in all of his fights, and he gets back up, and he makes you work, and that's all well and good. He had, I guess, technically the right style to fight a Makayev, and when he fought Makayev, it was just 12 takedowns. He got up every time, don't get me wrong, but no ability to break the grip, no ability to create space, no ability to get away. He really did get swarmed on in that fight. That's his UFC debut. He's not young. He had been talking a lot of shit online for a long time, being like, I should be in the UFC. They finally gave him his opportunity. To give him no favors, and he come up short. Now, here's the thing with Mikhaev is that he still is young, and he's very much green, and maybe Charles Johnson should have been able to give him a tougher go. Malcolm Gordon gave him a tougher go. Malcolm Gordon arguably won the second round and was doing okay in the third until he got caught. I just feel like Charles Johnson didn't necessarily show up. Now, Zhalgas Zhumagulov, he relies on the takedowns a lot himself, and I can see him getting Charles Johnson down and Johnson just popping back up. But Johnson's not really doing enough with the striking. He's not swarming. He's almost hesitant that the takedown's coming again, so he's not letting his hands go. And with Zhalgas, he's in a lot of these close-ass decisions. So when you look at his record, he loses to Rolian Paiva. But how? He outstruck him 66-52 and took him down twice. A lot of people thought Zhalgas won that fight. My main argument is that it was a close fight. He's good at keeping fights close. His fight with Albazi, not that he won that one, but Albazi's one of the top flyweight talents. He keeps it relatively close in a decision. His fight with Jeff Molina, his last time out, a lot of people thought he won that fight. Jeff Molina thought he won that fight. When they read the decision, he looks over like, oh shit, I won that? Now, by the numbers, yeah, he outstruck Zhalgas, but he gave up the 2 takedowns. Zhalgas is strong, he's durable, he comes forward, he keeps these fights close, and they're always up into interpretation. Now listen, if he's the favorite, I'm probably making the same argument saying, bro, all of his fights are close, and he's getting robbed on a bunch of these splits. Why not take Johnson? But that's not the case. Johnson's the favorite. Johnson, this fight's likely going 15 minutes. This fight's likely going to be competitive. And believe me, Johnson gets taken down by pretty much everybody. So there's nothing to suggest that Zhalgas isn't going to get a few takedowns. Now, it's how those judges are going to score those few takedowns. But I think he's live. I think he's live to squeak out a close, competitive decision. And again, at his underdog odds, I'm willing to add him to my undercard slate.
Yeah, I totally agree. And honestly, I really don't have anything to add to it. That was one of the initial ones that I was just like, Zhalgas should be able to take this guy down, and hopefully he does it consistently, and otherwise, like, the striking is relatively just close between the two of them. Yeah, Zhalgas has had he's 1-4 in the UFC, but it's like he's fighting good talents. I mean, his one win is against, and he did what he had to do against Jerome Rivera, but got him out of there in round 1. But yeah, like, otherwise, it's like all of the guys that he's lost to, I feel like Charles Johnson, from what I've seen, probably loses to them as well, and doesn't necessarily, like, the fight against Mikhaev wasn't even remotely close. And then you see, like, Malcolm Gordon have some success against Mikhaev, and you're like, you know, that Charles Johnson performance looks much worse than I think if we didn't see Malcolm Gordon against Mikhaev,
100%.
You know, give him some hard times. So I'm with you. I think live dog, Zhalgas Zhumagulov. We got Maryna Moroz taking on Jennifer Maia. -180 for Moroz, +155 for Maia. Another live dog, I think, here. This is kind of like a story of, like, recency bias as far as I'm concerned. You got Jennifer Maia. She's, you know, lost 3 of her last 4. And those are against Manon Fiorot, Caitlin Chookagian, and Valentina Shevchenko. She's fighting the elite of the division. And Maryna Moroz, you know, it seems like she's had a bit of a, you know, career resurgence. She's definitely looking a lot better. She absolutely dominated Agapova last time out. But I think striking will be relatively competitive at the very least between them. And Moroz has been, like, going to the grappling, controlling a lot of her opponents recently. That's been, like, her best reason for getting these victories. I think she's going to struggle to do that against Maia. So at +155, I think it's a pretty clear dog or pass situation. What about you?
Yeah, so again, this is totally a dog or pass type situation, and I wouldn't fault anybody for taking that Jennifer Maia. It's just like, what do I feel comfortable with personally? Everybody makes their bets on what they're comfortable with, and I don't like Jennifer Maia. So I find myself leaning towards Maryna Moroz, but of course I don't agree with the money line. So the reason being is that when you look at Jennifer Maia, it's difficult to say that Maryna Moroz is going to be able to go out there and replicate what a Manon Fiorot and a Caitlin Chookagian are able to do, because they both fight a specific way. But yeah, no, to me, she's way too plodding, man. She's way too plodding, and she allows the numbers to escape from her, right? So in both of those fights, it's her chasing her opponent around, them staying to the outside, using speed, and just touching and going. She comes from that shoot-to-box style where they're just going to march forward and try to land and sit down on their strikes. But again, against these active, like mobile strikers that are interested in just point fighting, that's how you defeat that kind of raw aggressiveness. So in her last fight against Fialho, who's probably the number one girl in the division, she got tripled up on the striking numbers. Her fight against Nzechukwu, a lot more competitive, but just having trouble finding the mark. Maryna Moroz, at her best, Ukrainian amateur boxing standout, has a nasty jab, has good volume, probably stays to the outside and tries to chip away at it. Now, what Maia has been doing is she's been wrestling a lot more. Of course, she won the first round against Valentina Shevchenko, which is the only reason people keep talking about her as being so elite. So she won a round over the champ, which is pretty cool. But in almost all of her fights, right? Her fight with Nzechukwu, sorry, it was her that got the takedown. The one with Mino Fiorot, she mixed one in. I just feel that she's chasing around her opponent a lot more. And then even in that one win, because she's 1-3 over her last 4, but the one winning against Jessica Ai, if you rewatch it, she probably loses that fight, if not for one thing. Incidental head clash, splits Jessica Ai's head open, and there's blood all over the place. So even though Ai's actually winning the combinations, it doesn't look good to the judges because she's bleeding all over the place. You rewatch the fight, it's extremely close, it's extremely competitive. And again, to me, that's just someone that can match volume and stay to the outside and use their technical boxing will have advantages. Maryna Moroz was supposed to be the number one contender at one point, beats Joanne Calderwood in a crazy fight with an armbar, and then it's inactivity, man. She just doesn't really fight all that often. So what do you really know about her? But to key in on her last 3 fights, I guess, against Sabina Mazo, her striking looked way better. Jab was on point, chopped her up from the inside, used that takedown when she needed it. I mean, good work. The fight with Maryna Bueno Silva, 139 to 88, does mix in 2 takedowns, but her speed and her volume.
That's a similar stylistic clash, to be perfectly honest.
Well, I agree. Maryna Bueno Silva comes from the same shoot to box style, right? So she's plodding, she's flat-footed, and she wants to use that traditional Brazilian Muay Thai, right? But she just can't track Maryna Moroz. Then Maryna takes 2 years off, which we don't know what she's doing, but we know she's doing whatever she's doing at American Top Team amongst some of the best talents and the best coaches in the game. And when she comes back against Agapova, she's a betting underdog to Maria Agapova and just killed her. Now, she was using her wrestling a lot more in the Bueno Silva fight. She was using her wrestling a lot more in the Agapova fight, but I don't think that takes away from the fact that she still got the boxing, she still got the volume, she still got the durability, and she might be able to mix in a little bit of wrestling. All of those are great tools to deal with Jennifer Maia, and people have been using those exact same tools to defeat Jennifer Maia, and I just feel like she should be able to do it. So again, minus 180, I do not like. If I want to juice up this line and try to make it more favorable, got to be a Moroz by decision. I don't see her knocking out Jennifer Maia or submitting her. But of course, this is MMA, so expect the unexpected. Anything can happen. I get that aspect of it, but I'm pulling a trigger on a couple underdogs. This just not one of them. Although I don't fault anybody that likes Jennifer Maia this week.
I'm flopping over to your side. I'm not betting this fight, though. Unless there's like a nice prop that pops up.
Could be a pass.
I mean, I called it dog or pass. We're going to call it favorite or pass. I mean, that Bueno Silva fight is really kind of like a telltale sign of the Jennifer Maia fight, in my humble opinion. Similar stylistic matchup. She's on a roll right now, Maryna Moroz. Good for her.
She looks good physically. Like, I think she's finally at that point of her career where she might realize some of that early potential.
Yep. It's all been coming together. She's, the Playboy model and all that stuff now. Everything's coming up Moroz these days. Yeah, Moroz for both of us is the pick. I don't know if I'm going to be betting that, though. Miles Johns takes on Vince Morales. We got minus 145 available for Miles Johns. Vince Morales can be had for plus 125. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no real thoughts, man. So Miles John, to me, fits the same description of a ton of good Tony Gravely types. With the wrestler boxer, extremely explosive, have the goods everywhere. They can strike, they can wrestle, they can grapple. Mario Batista jumps in mine too. He's the complete package, and then he just can't really take a punch, right? Now, other guys, they're defensively, they're making improvements, and they're changing these things to their game. And for him, it's like cardio is an issue. So the more he presses with his wrestling game and tries to get his offense going, the more he tires. The more he tires, the more he starts making a bunch of defensive mistakes. And as he does that, he just generally gets caught and gets put away. So again, looking through like his past fights, Batista does knock him out. Anderson dos Santos had caught him a few times, but he ends up knocking him out. John Castanon, his last time out, backs him up, grinds him, ends up hurting him, drops him, and then chokes him out. But to me, it all fits the same mold with Miles John. Great potential, not exactly comfortable in tying it all in together. So could he go out there and spring the upset? For sure. Again, this guy can wrestle. He can box. He's the exact style that I like to get behind in guys, but without the cardio and without the durability, he kind of makes it a bit of an issue. Now, Vince Morales, I actually don't really care for him all that much. Seems to be lower volume, but again, one thing about him is he's got some solid durability. He can wrestle. He spent out a lot of time with solid, solid training partners, solid gym, solid wrestling foundation. He can keep the fight upright. And when he keeps the fight upright, he seems to just go through the motions and fight to his opponent's level. But there's something there. Like, I often hate on him, but there's something there. The fight with Eamon Zahavi, cleanly outworks a clean striker, beats him up. His fight with Benito Lopez, he got robbed in that fight. He dropped Benito Lopez and outstruck him 64-54. They robbed him on that one. His fight with Louis Smolka, if anything, got a solid cast iron chin on him. Never been knocked out. Vince Morales completely extinguishes his fire with a beautiful right hand. There's stuff to like there. Now, his last fight against Jonathan Martinez just too fast, too dynamic, stays to the outside. Johns is fast. He can be dynamic, but he's not staying to the outside, using his footwork to set up strikes. He's coming forward and just kind of overexerting himself. And to me, I just got a bad gut feeling that the longer the thing goes, Vince Morales still stays in your face. And the longer Vince Morales stays on his feet, in your face, he's going to be looking to land that counter right hand. And I'm not 100% sure that Johns is going to take it. So again, Vince Morales doesn't show a whole lot of knockouts on paper outside of the Smolka fight and a knockdown against Benito Lopez. But he's got some sneaky, decent power in his hands, and he's got enough durability, I think, to overcome that early wear. So I don't want a whole lot of investment on this one. Again, it's lower my priorities. It's a dogger pass situation. I think it could be very competitive. I think it could go either way. I find myself leaning towards Vince Morales. But again, when you watch tape, you will see that it appears that Miles John is a far superior fighter. He's faster. He's got better combinations. He's got better wrestling. But the durability and that to me, once the cardio starts to fatigue, by the second and the third round, he's completely gassed. When that happens, it becomes a problem for him. He just gives too many openings. And again, if you want to shit on the guy, like, even just go watch his fight with Cole Smith. It's his UFC debut, but it's the same shit. He dominates the first two rounds. In the third round, he's done. Smith takes his back. Smith almost rear naked chokes him, and he squeaks out a split decision over Cole Smith. He had landed 31 significant strikes and a takedown. It's abysmal, but he gasses. Batista gasses, gets knocked out. John Castaneda gasses, got hurt, and then got choked out. So Vince has just got to stay in the fight. And so as much as I don't really care about this fight pre-flop at all, I really don't, I would be interested in the live betting angle of it, because Miles John is a hell of a problem for the first round until he starts to fatigue. And if Morales can maybe lose that first round, keep with it, start to find openings, the later it goes, I think he would be live to maybe connect with something.
Yeah, you basically stole all the words out of my mouth, so I don't have to say too much about this. Don't really love jumping on Vince Morales at plus 125. Expect him maybe to get taken down or just lose the striking exchanges early in the fight. As you were alluding to, fight doesn't go to decision, plus 120. It's obviously a super, super early number that just got released at one specific book, so who knows where that's going to go. But the fact that it's plus money to doesn't go to decision, I kind of like that. I think that's where my money would be, at plus 120 as opposed to plus 125 on Morales. I think one of these guys finds the finish in this matchup. So that's where my money would go rather than Vince Morales. But Vince Morales will be my pick for the purposes of the show. We got Ricky Turcios taking on Kevin Natividad. Ricky Turcios is a minus 155 favorite. Natividad can be had for plus 135. I mean, what a character this Turcios guy is. Like, if you watch I saw James Lynch had an interview with him the other day. Shouts to our former Fight Network employer there, our employee. Colleague. Is that what you, yeah, employee. Yeah, we didn't hire. Yeah, we weren't his boss by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, yeah, the guy's he's either super, super stoned. He seems like he's on, like, ayahuasca at all times. Like, it's the real sight to behold. But yeah, that Eamon Zahavi fight last time out was not exactly a great moment. Obviously, he came off of Ultimate Fighter as the winner of that season. You know, he won against Brady Hiestand mostly on volume, but like lots of people thought Hiestand should have won the finale there. He just didn't, I don't know what happened again. Like, 27 significant strikes thrown. Now, Zahavi wanted to fight that type of fight, But yeah, it was a really, really bad look all the way around. Natividad, another low-volume striker, obviously knocked out by Miles Johns in his UFC debut, knocked out in the first round. The chin is an issue, but I haven't seen too much fight-ending power for Ricky Turcios. I'm really torn here. I would love to say, if that fight against Amin Zahabi didn't happen, I'd be like, well, he was able to put up 100 significant strikes. That should be enough against a guy like Natividad, who doesn't really throw all that much, and he'll win, and Ricky will win on volume. But can't ignore the fact that he only threw 27 significant strikes. There was no takedowns, no nothing. He just didn't stay active, and that's what he needs to do to win this fight. I'm completely torn. I'll lean towards Turcios, but not going to get a cent of my money. What about you?
Yeah, I actually been meaning to. Oh yeah, okay. So it has happened before. Generally speaking, you win the Ultimate Fighter, they try to set you up with an easy one, your first fight at the gate. And there has been Ultimate Fighter winners that lose their first fight at the gate, but UFC generally tries to get them back in the win column. I just see Martin Bravo, though. Martin Bravo actually won tough and then lost 3 years in a row in the UFC and got cut. So, yeah, there's just so many Ultimate Fighters these days. Guys win them and maybe aren't exactly the creme de la creme in the division. With Ricky Turcios, though, I find the exact same problems as you, is that when you watch him on the regional scene, guy's a little Tasmanian devil, man. He's a whirlwind. He just keeps going and he throws and he tries to get takedowns and he's tenacious and he stays on you and he's young and he's agile. And he's like a fighter's fighter. He's looking to mix it up. His fight on Contender Series against Boston Salmon, he lands 110 significant strikes. He outstruck Boston Salmon 110-61. Lost the fight, for the record, but 110 significant strikes landed huge. The fight with Brady Hiestand, people maybe thought he had lost because of the 6 takedowns given up. But even with 6 takedowns given up, he still scored a knockdown and landed over 100 significant strikes. So, again, the guy's he's a whirlwind. And with Zahabi's a low volume striker, technical, sound, high level guy, but very low volume. So it was like this was tailor made for him to go out and just do what he always does, and that's throw up the big numbers. And he literally just stared at him the entire time. Now, Zahabi's not known for huge knockout power, so it wasn't as if I'm worried about getting caught by something. I couldn't tell you what it was, but he did not fight like the same guy whatsoever. So I know what the UFC is trying to do, trying to get him back in the good graces, to give him Kevin Natividad, a guy that could, you wouldn't be remiss for forgetting about him being on the roster whatsoever. He is 0-2 with the UFC, both losses by knockout, but maybe more troubling than that, both losses over a 2-year span. So he doesn't fight very often. He's not super durable. He's not old by any stretch, but I don't really know how many improvements he's making. His wrestling's fairly okay. He's got some actually decent power in his own hands. Like if you want to stand to him, he could crack you and put you away. But it seems like his win condition is using that striking, and using that striking is getting him knocked out in a lot of these spots. So even his fight with Miles John, he seemed very low volume the entire time. And against Dana Baccarel, he never really quite got going. I feel like Ricky Turcios will give him every chance available to make this a fight, right? To land some good shots. But if Turcios just gets back to what he does best, I feel like he should be able to just continuously work Natividad over the course of 15 minutes, land those shots, keep up the work rate. Natividad, meanwhile, he's fought effectively 50 seconds of ring time in the last 2+ years. So take advantage of that, man. Try to drag him to those deeper waters and make something happen. But whereas some guys, you're like, oh, this guy will fight for my dollar and he'll go for it and I'm in. Turcios seemed like at least he was one of those guys, but that last fight definitely has it in me now that maybe you should pull the trigger back and not quite release the hammer, because I guess you wouldn't pull the trigger back at all. Just don't take the shot, because Turcios maybe, it could be an injury, could have been not motivated, could have been a mental issue, could have been he got clipped by something early and was just hesitant after that. But cause for concern for sure, because this is the type of fight he should walk right through. He should win. He should look really good doing it. And at -155, I actually really don't mind the line whatsoever. But lost on the Contender Series because even though he was landing the volume, all the cleaner shots were from Boston Salmon, right? The Hiestand fight, he got out wrestled and maybe could have lost. And then the Zahabi fight, he never did anything. So that's not just one bad fight. That's a few bad fights, right? Even on the Ultimate Fighter show itself, not particularly a standout runaway. And for Brady Hiestand, he's 22 years old. He's just a little kid. So what does Turcios really have to offer? That I'm not entirely sure. And so I will pick him. He is the pick. But yeah, don't love it. Nearing it towards the bottom, and you can maybe classify it as a pass altogether.
That's, yeah, sounds like we're on the same page with that. We've got Maria Oliveira taking on Vanessa Demopoulos. Straight pick 'em. It's, I mean, we've talked about Vanessa a whole bunch of times. Like, her wrestling isn't very good. She's got very, very good jiu-jitsu. If she gets to the mat, you go through Maria Oliveira's career. And so, like, she's, you know, Kana Azakura armbarred her in 2017. She was, I mean, her first MMA fight in 2015, she was armbarred. So it's like there have been people who have, you know, if they are able to get her to the ground, she's been submitted. Being able to go full 15 against Tabitha Ricci would probably imply that she's made improvements there. If this fight stays on the feet, she should be able to use her reach and, you know, probably pick Demopoulos apart and win this on volume, frankly. Like, the numbers for her on volume have been pretty solid. I'm going to pick Maria Oliveira. There is not very much confidence there, but it's with Demopoulos. It's like, if she can't get this fight to the mat, her striking just leaves a lot to be desired in a lot of spots, and it's a straight pick. I ended up on her in her last time out in a fight that, I mean, frankly, most people thought that she lost, except for two of the three people that matter. The judges gave her the nod against Jinyu Frey. But she was like plus 200, plus 250 or whatever in that spot, and that's why I jumped on Demopoulos. I feel like all the metrics, all the stats, haven't dug into tape, obviously, yet for this fight, but would lead me towards Maria Oliveira here, so sign me up for her. What about you?
Yeah, again, I think this one could definitely go either way, so I wouldn't fault anybody for one side or the other. Yeah, Vanessa Demopoulos, she's super cast iron. Like, she's fairly durable. She got dropped, I suppose, by Silvana Gomez Juarez, but again, as soon as the fight hits the ground, she's got her wits and she gets the quick submission. Her ground game's awesome. Problem is that she's never really shown that wrestling to get the fight to the ground, and her offense, even though she's willing to come forward and mix it up, is like mostly her getting hit from distance. So she's got a whole lot of problems in her arsenal. And the last fight with Jinyu Frey, I don't actually think she won that fight. The one prior, she had been dropped prior to getting the armbar. So she very well could be 0-3 in the UFC. But and she's tenacious, man. There's something that I do like about her. She's a fighter's fighter. She's willing to engage. She's willing to take a shot to give a shot. And at some point, she's going to figure out, you know, different tools about how to get the fight to the ground. Once the fight does hit the ground, that's her wheelhouse, man. She's very, very talented on the ground, has competed at a very high level BJJ. And of course, being a former stripper, has that like stripper grip, you know? She can use her legs to climb up a fucking pole, I swore. Okay, beat me out on that one. But what Vanessa Demopoulos breakdown, she got that stripper guard, right? And the thing with stripper guard is she can get these unusual angles, get a hold of you, and when she gets a hold of you, it's money time, baby. That's where she does her best work. So with Maria Oliveira, I think that she's the better striker. She's got the better volume. She could have a lot of success. The issue being that she gives up takedowns in pretty much all of her fights. You had mentioned on the regional scene, she went over to Ryzen. She lost to Asakura. Again, taken down, submitted by an armbar. She was on the contender series against Maryna Rodriguez. Maryna Rodriguez, not known for her wrestling. Of course, she did go 1-for-1, getting the one takedown on Oliveira. Tabitha Ricci, considered undersized by many. Easy 5 takedowns in that fight. I shouldn't say easy 5 for 11, but got the takedowns when she wanted it. 6.5 minutes of control time. And then her last fight against Gloria De Paula. Gloria De Paula is pretty much just a kickboxer. And De Paula got 2 takedowns on her as well. And actually outstruck her 105-96. MMA decisions, people online, a lot of people thought De Paula could have won that fight. Very close, very tight. The main theme is she gives up takedowns in almost all of her fights. So Vanessa Demopoulos, she'll get hit. Of course she'll get hit. She always gets hit. But she'll come forward and she'll stick with it. Maybe it's a takedown. Maybe it's a caught kick. Maybe it's you fall to the ground. Maybe she pulls guard. I don't know. But I got a feeling that the fight will hit the ground at some point. And when it does, it's Vanessa Demopoulos time. So sign me up for a Demopoulos to get the job done. Use that flexibility. Use that submission game. Hopefully on top, like get the takedown and get me on top. But even if she had to end up on bottom for a few minutes to eventually hit a sweep, hit a reversal, throw up a submission, like I just think that there's a big grappling difference here, and she should be able to capitalize on it.
She was able to taken down 5 times by Tabitha Ricci. Was able to survive against her. I don't know. 7-inch reach advantage for Maria Oliveira too. The more I dig into this, oh God, I'm probably gonna have money on Maria Oliveira. God help me. All right,
How
moving.
about the Ricci 5'1" with a 61-inch reach? So
Same reach as
she had a big
Demopoulos.
reach. No, Vanessa's she's got a 59-inch reach. She's actually 2 inches shorter.
I mean, Tapology has her listed at 62.
Oh, yeah, no, Vanessa Demopoulos.
Those are some T-Rex arms. Sub 60. That's a 10-inch reach advantage, bro. 59. She's gonna be eating shots. She's very good at eating shots. Like, she's proven that many times before. She's tough as nails. Don't get me wrong. But I mean, everything is kind of pointing towards Maria Oliveira. That's the type of card we're dealing with this week. All right, let's move on. We got Brady Hiestand taking on Fernie Garcia. Minus 155 Hiestand, plus 125 for Fernie Garcia. Who you got here, buddy?
Yeah, well, definitely one I want to jump into a lot more with Fernie Garcia. Again, I think we know what he's capable of doing. Showed some pretty good power on Contender Series. You know, tough, gritty, decent striking. His debut against Journey Newson, he just didn't show that he was the complete package. Like, he was giving up takedowns to Newson, stand-up wise, didn't really seem super comfortable. He could have won that fight. 100% he could have won that fight. But he just kind of like out of it of sorts. But to me, the big thing was the takedown defense. Journey Newson had taken some time off, obviously, but former pro boxer. Like, the guy was a straight up boxer. Like, his win condition is generally letting his hands go. He took some time off, dealt with some injuries, got knocked out, and then decided, I'm just going to wrestle. And then that ended up being the path to victory, is using that wrestling. Brady Hiestand, meanwhile, I seen this kid fight in Canada. He was like 21 years old. He fought Chan and a Ledger. He literally come all the way to Canada to fight the hometown guy in his own backyard. Gave him a go, too, in a title fight. I'd like 21. Like, who does that? See him on the Contender Series. He's a dog on the bone. He looked like probably the best prospect in the show, being that he was young, he's got a good style, and he's the kind of person that you can really see making developments within the UFC. Durable, got a good chin, and again, his tenacity. I think that's the biggest drawing feature to him. So, guess Ricky Turcios in the final. It's a close fight. I think it was close to a pick'em type fight. I did go with Brady Hiestand, and I think he fought extremely valiantly. Lost, got outnumbered on the feet, but the 6 takedowns, stayed with it, was kind of way less experience, and did everything right. Unfortunately, didn't get the victory. I think there's a lot of kid like that can work with. And again, that being a year and 3 months ago, I do expect to see some solid improvements out of him. Now, regardless of that, because all the improvements that he may or may not have made, that's all speculation. But what do we actually know about this kid? He can wrestle, man. Not only can he wrestle, but he'll reshot. He'll stay on you. He'll try to do whatever he can to try to throw, 1, 2, 3 takedowns into the mix and just continuously reshot, get a hold of you, take you to the ground. He's got a variety of different trips, single legs, double leg, push you up against the cage, hit you in the open field. Wrestling seems to be his go-to. Against Fernie, that seems to be his kryptonite, right? So I hate to say it's as easy as striker versus wrestler, but I think the UFC sees they got a young, talented kid in Brady who's close to winning tough. You want to bring this kid up along the proper way. So you give him the guy from the Contender Series who lost his 0-1 in the UFC, lost his debut, lost to Journey Newson, didn't show anything in the Journey Newson fight. Does he have a puncher's chance? For sure. But is he going to go grind for 15 minutes? I don't think so. So barring ring rust being a serious issue for Hiestand, I think he gets those takedowns and makes them work for himself. So sign me up for Brady Hiestand.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement there. I think he just takes him down at will. Fernie Garcia, obviously, his Contender Series fights against Joshua Weems. We saw just how helpless Joshua Weems was against Christian Rodriguez at last time out. And the guy's got a long history. It's like if he doesn't get a submission, like, you can absolutely rock him. So, like, that win doesn't really mean all that much to me. I was on Brady Hiestand as well, plus 140 underdog against Ricky Turcios. It was close enough that I felt like I was on the value side. It was a split decision. People were very split on who they thought had won that decision. So it's like I didn't feel too bad about that bet. And yeah, being 23 years old, onwards and upwards, big improvements. And that really comes down to, I think he can take down Fernie Garcia at will here. And when he's on the mat, he's not at risk of getting knocked out. So minus 155 seems like a relatively fair price to me for Brady Hiestand. So sign me up as well. And finally, we got Natália Silva taking on Teresa Bleda. Natália Silva is a minus 165 favorite. Bleda can be had for plus 145. This one's kind of interesting because Natália Silva, when she came into the UFC, she hadn't fought since 2019. It was like a nearly 3-year layoff since she had fought in Jungle Fight. And she came in against Jasmine, and she put on a show. She was like You're like, okay, this girl, the record didn't really jump off the page, or like the numbers was like pretty much a straight pick 'em. You're like, what do the books know that we do not? We stayed away from it for the most part, but she went in there. She was able to take down Jasmine at will. Landed 96 significant strikes. Everything about her game looked like, okay, throw out whatever happened early on in this girl's career, because that 12-5 record doesn't seem to be what she is today. Blade, on the other hand, was on Contender Series. She took on like a black belt in Maia, and was just what I saw from Blade on the Contender Series. Like, she was able to she's super, super strong, able to take down and just like control Maia, or at least like hold her up against the cage a whole bunch of times as well. The real like question mark in this fight is like how good, like there's some submission wins on Natália Silva's record. How good is her ground game when it gets down there? I'm not entirely sure. From what I've seen from her striking game, I think she should have a speed advantage and probably wins like in terms of volume between the two of these girls. Bleda is super, super strong. Can she just hold her down and maintain position in this fight? I'm not entirely confident about that at all. Potentially, it's a hashtag armbar from guard type of situation. I'm going to pick Silva because I was pretty impressed with her fight against Double J last time out. Don't know if I'm going to get to the minus 165 money line, to be perfectly honest, though. What about you?
Yeah, so I actually completely agree. And Jasmine's team, they had accepted the fight. They're extremely intelligent people, right? They want to see the tape. They want to know the opponent. They do all their studies. And if they can turn down the opponent for a good reason, then they won't hesitate to do so. Maybe she hasn't got a whole lot of negotiating power because she's early in her career, but they like the matchup against Silva. The thing that I kept stressing to everybody that I spoke to about it is the long layoff is particularly concerning. People always assume a long layoff is a bad thing. Oh, well, they're going to come back. They're not going to quite be what they used to be, and the ring rust, and could be this, and motivation. But a lot of the time with these younger fighters, they've taken that time off and they've just improved exponentially. And so just like you said, when she came in against Jasmine Jasudavicius, she looked solid. Natália Silva outlands her 96-31 with the 2 takedowns. So to me, what's extremely impressive about this is Jasmine is a wrestler. Jasmine wrestled at a fairly high level in Canada, late blossomer to the sport of wrestling, but once she got there, had competed at a fairly high level and has routinely mixed in the wrestling competitively into her own fights. So to get taken down by Natália Silva, she's strong, she's physical, she's got good grappling. The striking, she was doubling her up, tripling her up. She was fighting long. She was using combinations. She was very accurate with her punches. And that's off a 3-year-long layoff. That's her first fight back. So I would say that her sophomore outing off this return is going to get even better. I mean, she's young, born in 1997, and continuously making those improvements, getting better, coming off a very solid victory. And in that victory, she showed you cardio, she showed you pace, she showed you volume, she showed you wrestling and grappling, kind of the complete package in ways, but still a long ways to go. Don't get me wrong. Teresa Blade up, this is possibly just me being harsh on her, but like I went to Morelli's place for every Tuesday's Contender Series, and quite literally during every episode, we'd be like, yo, 5 contract Dana? And yeah, 5 contract Dana every week. And it would be like, yeah, I'm going to give it 5 contracts tonight every week. With Bleda, I was like, yo, man, this is a 4 contract night because Bleda should not get the contract. She did get the early knockdown. She got on top. And then after that, I didn't really see a whole lot out of her. Now, she's 20 years old. She's super young. She's super green. 100% she could go to LFA. 100% she can come back on the Contender Series. 100% they could have gave her a developmental deal. And then Dana White on his thing says, I don't know what it is about this girl, but there's something about her that I like. Who the hell knows what that means, Paul? Who the hell knows what that means? But he does sign her. So now it's like sink or swim, right? You're going to come to the UFC. You're going to have to prove that you belong here. But she's still very young. She's still very green. Physically, she's okay. I think that she's going to have some success. But I would think Natália Silva's just got far better striking, far better. I wouldn't say physicality's far better, but just the striking and the pace should allow her to slowly pull away on the number side of things. And then in terms of Bleda clinching up, pressing her up against the cage, and getting a takedown, all things that Jasmine Jasudavicius could have done but was unable to. So I think Natália is going to, again, keep making improvements and show us an even better version of what we saw the last time out, which was good enough. So sign me up for Natália Silva as well.
All right, bets that I am considering this week. Sherman, plus 145. Zhalgas, plus 135. The under in the Miles Johns, Vince Morales fight. Maria Oliveira, Brady Hiestand, and maybe Natália. All of consideration. No money is actually down on the table. But the people don't come here to hear my picks. They come to hear the PRP. Hit them with it, Cody.
Well, we're starting off with Spivak. He'll probably be at the top of the ticket. And don't be too proud to hedge if you need to. But anyways, we're going to go Spivak. We're going to go with Kenny Nzechukwu. We're going to go Chase Sherman, dog number 1. Muslim Salikhov, even money. Cody Brundage, dog number 2. Paul brings up tons of good points. Maybe that's your PRP pick or you just avoid it altogether. But for me, he will be my dog number 2 right now. Jack Della, he's top ticket material. Zhalgas, dog number 3. I'm going to go with Maryna Moroz. I'm going to go with Vince Morales, dog number 4. Ricky Turcios, Vanessa Demopoulos is another even money pick, Brady Hiestand, and Natália Silva. So again, at the top, who do you like the most? Well, what screams is Jack Della. He's definitely top ticket material. Him versus Spivak, that's getting you close to your even money with that hedge out option. What do you put on beyond that? Well, that's where these cards are getting difficult. It's like, who's your third most confident play? You know, I like a Brady Hiestand, I do, but he's young and he's 0-1 in the UFC and he's coming off a year-long layoff and he's a -155. I like Natália Silva. Pat Maia would slap me right in the face for considering putting that on a second ticket, you know. I like Ricky Turcios, but he blew it so hard his last time out. I like Maryna Moroz. Pat Maia would slap me again across the face. So, yeah, this is not the easiest parlay card again, but last week's card wasn't an easy parlay card as well. We just hit the favorites that we needed in the right order, and then this week looking to do the same thing. I wish I had some better advice for prize picks this week because I think this would be an excellent card to tag from a prize pick standpoint. Unfortunately, you guys facilitated shooting the show on a Monday for me, so we don't quite have the pricing. But if you got any questions, hit us up online, and if there's any little gem that comes along the way, then for sure we'll try to send it out to the masses.
Yeah, like Brady Hiestand. I mean, we don't have numbers, so it's hard to say, but like Hiestand over takedowns yeah. Seems like something that I would be looking for. Maria Oliveira over significant strikes. Interesting. She's got to keep the fight upright. That's the key thing there, but the numbers usually are pretty good for her. It'd be interesting just to see the number on that.
I'd like to see Jack Della's fantasy score, because if he KOs Roberts in the first, he's hitting it. And if he beats the crap out of him over 3 and knocks him out in the third, he's getting it. So in both cases, I feel like he's in for coming out party. Sherman over significant strikes. That would be, I mean, these are it's like, yeah, for sure.
We kind of have an idea of like where we would be, like, which names we would be searching first. We just don't have numbers to go off of that. But Ion, even Ion takedowns, if you get the right type of number. Because, like, that guy can get 3 takedowns in round 1, still get knocked out in round 1, and you still get over the 2.5 takedowns. You know what I mean? He's like that type of guy. They usually only do it for the favorites, though. Most of these props, they haven't been doing too many underdog props. You're probably not going to get an Ion number on those takedowns, to be perfectly honest. And frankly, Sherman, you're not going to get one on those. But yeah, we'll see where the prices land, and we'll go from there. But anyway, that was an early first look edition of the Dogger Pass podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. For Cody and Megan, I'm Paul, saying goodbye and good luck.